without bias, forget marijuana lances. As I told you sometimes back, that we are turning Uganda into a marijuana state. The third phase had just begun. Some marijuana growers are looking forward to get licenses in order to export drugs for medical purposes, so they say. But believe me, in years to come, we shall be dancing with marijuana addicts in our own backyard. I understood that the cabinet is meeting soon to approve new guidelines for growing marijuana. The minister in charge of marijuana proposed new pre-licensing regime that require investors in the country nascent marijuana industry to secure buyers before giving licenses to operate. The new proposal came from subcommittee on marijuana from the National Drug Authority, NDA, and the Ministry of Health. The architect of the proposal believe that radical measures can streamline and help the government kick out the process in a multi-billion medical cannabis industry. The subcommittee on marijuana seems not to understand the power of speculators in the marijuana world operation. You may think that you are wiser than speculators, but if you look at drugs war going on in many countries around the world, which indicates that those involved in drugs industry are nowhere near to win a war on speculators. The DNA chairman, Dr. 𝙁𝙇, said, we want serious investors who are going to produce cannabis for medical purposes only. It is clear to me now that Uganda does not have serious investors. The proposed guidelines for marijuana business seems to be put in place to test the gravity of bad decision making. If you know that those are, or there are, more than 100 companies and individuals with pending application in your database, why don't you vet those companies and check their business background before you start blowing a whistle that should have not been blown. You say all those who have applied will be asked to resubmit application with mandatory offtake agreement. If the same agreement we are talking about can take months, even years, before negotiation, then why not spend more time on developing laws and regulation that can protect the people of Uganda against cannabis, then come out with something that is not properly baked for consumption. If the agreement is supposed to be between the producers and buyers to buy or sell certain amount of the future product, then I begin to ask myself, what is the role of DNA in this process? What you are trying to tell us now does not give us a clear intention to what you are doing. The new proposal does not explain how you intend to protect the people of Uganda from cannabis addiction. Through that process of producing and selling marijuana to investors for exports. We are more concerned about introducing marijuana into our society. The after effect of addiction is very serious and dangerous. I wonder whether the drug authorities know what they're doing or understand the after effect of addiction that is going to come when we begin that business of producing marijuana in our own country. Whether they have thought about the future use of marijuana, because the moment you begin to produce marijuana and you are looking for the outside buyers, but you have to understand, as I said before, those investors will look for buyers abroad, internal, in Africa, and a home addiction is not going to be ruled out. Nobody has thought about that. What we want is to have investors who can promise you that, look, we are going to sell the product abroad But abroad does not only mean that the product is going to be sold in Europe. It means, as I said before, African countries are going to bear the burden of that marijuana production in Uganda. We have to understand that marijuana addiction in Europe itself, it has been and is problematic to different states. And they're doing whatever they can to fight the war against drugs. But some countries want to make it easy so that their own people can get addicted to drugs. And then they will go around and find a way to solve that problem. But why do you create a problem and then try to solve it later? It is the duty of the state to ensure that just business proposals should not affect their own people. I hear those officials talking that what they are doing now and the requirement they are asking for is going to ensure that marijuana farms or sites are not located near schools, hospitals, or residential areas. But please, believe me, whether you produce the marijuanas 100 kilometers away from schools or hospitals, the moment you start producing, the moment the market is there, the businessman or businesswomen will try to look for market, extra market. I can come to you and say, listen, I have the market in Europe. I'm going to export it to Europe. I have the market in Africa. I'm going to export it to other African countries. The local domestic market are also looking for something to consume. And the moment those firms get a license to operate, you have already given them a permission to look for buyers anywhere in Africa, in Europe, including Uganda itself. So that argument that we are going to keep drugs far away from schools, from hospitals, from the public, it does not make sense. Whether you think that you are going to have a robust security system, access, whether you are going to have a robust security system with access control system and intrusion. It's a dream. Those are not true in business sense. It is nice that you have come out with just well-detailed proposal. But the question is, will that stop drugs dealers from reaching schools or Ugandans, wherever they are? No, it does not make sense. And I don't believe that the same officials, the same government officials who are working on those proposals and measures to turn Uganda into a narco state understand what they're doing. What they want is, let the foreign currency come in. When that money comes, we can steal as much as we want to steal. But the health of Ugandans or the health of other people in African countries are not taken into consideration. Instead, we are going to turn all these people into addicts. And then in 10 years' time, or 20 years' time, we are going to be faced with problems that you and me will start going back looking for a solution to something that we should have not started. We should have studied the marijuana consumptions, the drug consumption in other parts of Europe, America, and understood what it's doing to the people there. We have problems with drugs in different countries in the world. They are fighting day in, day out. And speculators and people who sell drugs are being intercepted, caught, charged, day in, day out. But those people who are in the drug deals, they are there to make profit. And they know exactly what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. And they turn a lot of people into addicts. We have in several countries, people are trying to get out of addiction. We turn people into addicts. Or they just became victim of greed. As we move to earn billions of dollars, pounds, under the pretext of selling marijuana for medical purposes. Even though growing marijuana or cannabis for treatment or medical purposes, such as cancer, diseases, and other sicknesses, which everybody is now claiming that, look, we need those marijuana medicine to cure those sickness. Well, it's good, but it should not be turned into a billions of dollars or a billions of pound business. How many sick people around the world need billions of marijuana drugs? We could have started with a small-scale business, even though we know that those who are dealing in those drugs for medical purposes are making a lot of billions for their own benefit. Let me tell you, those benefiting from just drugs are those businessmen who want to make maximum profit. And they're doing it already in Europe. But when they come to Africa, like Uganda, they want to produce those drugs in our own backyard. But why can't they produce it in their own backyard? Why do you produce those drugs in Uganda and sell it to Canada, sell it to America, sell it to Europe? Europe can also produce the same marijuana back at home so that they can use it to cure their people at home. Regulate it, control it, and let it be produced in that country. Why should Uganda take our own public land and turn it into a marijuana field and then export it? You get big sum of money, billions. What do you do with that billions? It come back and you officials steal all this money. And then at the same time, you make our people addicted. When you talk about that sickness you want to cure, the local people are dying. And none of us can do anything about it. Those calling themselves investors are running a business of making money and when they make money, they want to make maximum profit. Therefore, if you tell me that the beneficiaries of such a project is the government and investors, I will agree with you. I will agree with you. But the long-term effect will turn our nation in a narco state with so many addicts. Believe me, we have seen enough of it in different countries. I don't see any reason why the DNA and the Ministry of Health should keep the name of more than 100 companies, including companies and individuals confidential. When they are seeking government permission to grow and export cannabis for medical purposes, we need to be transparent and truthful to ourselves. Let's publish the names of those 100 companies and individuals, companies, so that people of Uganda begins to know who they are dealing with for future records. We need accountability for whatever we do. If we are going to start producing marijuana for medical purposes in Uganda, then we have to understand that if you go into that joint venture with investors, then you have to be open to our people. Lay your case before the nation. Let them understand what is the risk and what is the benefit we are going to have. If the risk is bigger than the benefit, then we should not do it. I don't want to wake up in the morning 10 years from now seeing our grandchildren, our children, our people sleeping on the street because they're addicts. They cannot work, they cannot go to school, or the school are infiltrated because when you take those marijuana, then you think you are in heaven. You are playing angel somewhere there. That is what we want to avoid. That is what we don't want to have in a country like Uganda or any part of an African country. If you love your people, you don't introduce marijuana for export because you think it's going to bring you more dollars, more pounds, more euro. You don't do that as a politician. That's why when I talked in the other video, I talk about the politics of lie. It is time that all of you, wherever you are, I don't care, but you have to understand, we don't want to have our kids, our grandchildren, the people who are going to replace us, become addicts to marijuana simply because we want to export and get some foreign country into the country. You can develop a country But if you develop a country with more addicts than the people who can take care of the country or the people around us, then we are going the wrong way. It is time, brothers and sisters, whether you're at home, whether you're abroad, we should not allow this to happen. But I want to put this for record. When the time comes, those who participated in destroying our own people have to answer. I have to answer. And I have to make sure that they are not going to go free of charge. Let's not allow our country to become a narco state. Thank you for listening. I will be back. And please don't forget to subscribe. We have a mission. Thank you.